Ciao ragazze, buonasera. Sandra?
Buonasera, buonasera a tutti. Good evening to everybody. Welcome to this Sunday event, Caffè Cultura.
Ciao ragazze, buonasera. Sandra?
Buonasera a tutti. Good evening to everybody. Welcome to this Sunday event, Caffè Cultura. Siamo a posto?
Sì. Siamo già collegati. Possiamo andare, possiamo iniziare. Grazie.
Okay. Hello everybody. This is Sandra Marinelli and I'm proud to substitute Daniela Henderson, who is our cultural board director.
Siamo già collegati.
She's not feeling good. And so welcome to this Sunday event, Caffè Cultura, at Dante Alighieri Society of Michigan. As March, most likely you know, as March is internationally recognized as a month to remember and celebrate women's rights, this Caffè Cultura will focus on an important artistic figure of Italian art, Artemisia Gentileschi. So I'm very honored and pleased to welcome one of the youngest Dante's board members, Erika Caturegli. Erika Caturegli is Italian. She has a master in foreign language focus with a concentration of art history, and she is a PhD candidate. And she will speak and she will clarify the artist Artemisia Gentileschi. So I let the honor to Erika to speak about Artemisia. Thank you, Erika.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me this evening to talk about this phenomenal artist. So before we begin to talk about Artemisia Gentileschi, I would like to contextualize the time period in which she produced most of her art. But first, I would like to start with this extremely powerful quote that was taken directly from one of the letters that Artemisia wrote to an art collector and art buyer. This was actually towards the end of Artemisia's life, but it well summarizes the character that this woman had and honestly her entire life. In this letter, she's talking about a commission that she was asked to paint, and she says, "With me, your illustrious lordship will not lose, and you will find the spirit of Caesar in the soul of a woman." So from these few words, you can understand that Artemisia was not a typical woman of her time. But let's talk about the Baroque period. So Artemisia is actually considered nowadays one of the best and most well-rounded exponent of the Baroque, and especially for being a woman, she's actually probably one of the only women representative of this art time. So if the Renaissance had brought at the forefront of the artistic scene the classic values of the lost Greek and Roman empires with their tenets of idealized beauty, the Baroque sees a return to religious themes. This is because in 1519, Martin Luther had started the movement that then will lead to the schism of the Catholic Church that will then be divided into Catholic and Protestant Church. And Martin Luther from then on had actually banned all sorts of religious representation. And as the Catholic Church was trying to regain power and was trying to show their strength, their wealth, their power, they truly poured all of their efforts into showing what the Catholic Church stood for. So religious themes became extremely important for the artistic endeavors of the time. Also, the Baroque period is characterized by quite an opulent, decadent, and exaggerate style, if you wish. This is a clear example. If any of you has visited the Cathedral of St. Peter in Rome, this is the canopy made by the sculptor Bernini. It's the Baldacchino by Bernini, which is actually at the center of the cathedral under the cupola. And you can tell and you can see, you know, all the gold and the intricate design. So the idea was to show the wealth and power of the Catholic Church as the only and true church. Also, images of religious worship became something that were supposed to inspire awe and inspire piety in churchgoers, and also something that could be easily recognized by the illiterate people of the time. So some distinctive traits of the Baroque are a sense for the theatrical. For example, a clear technique used was the trempeau, which means, you know, surpassing the actual oil on the canvas. And a lot of techniques were used to make paintings look like as if they were statues. And another trait was real or implied movement, an exploration of the movement and the space in which they are articulated, and an emphasis on the use of lights and its effects. So this is another example by Bernini. This is Daphne and Apollo. And this statue is fantastic because you can see it and admire it from many different point of views, and there's always something to discover and something to look at. And we cannot talk about the Baroque without talking about Caravaggio. So Caravaggio is perhaps the best exponent of the Baroque. He became the master of using the chiaroscuro technique that was actually introduced by Leonardo in the Renaissance to give dynamism to his paintings. The way in which he uses bright and dark spots in his paintings bring drama to his paintings and add a lot of drama to them. We talked about earlier that the Baroque had this passion and this love for the theatrical, and Caravaggio's paintings truly portray that. This is the Call of St. Matthew, and we can see the dark spots here in the top left corner and here, and then how he uses the light in this case to highlight the point of the painting on which he wants the viewer to focus his or her attention. So from chiaroscuro, something else derived, which is tenebrism. So tenebrism is nothing but an accentuation and an exaggeration of the chiaroscuro. So in tenebrism, there is truly a heavy contrast between the use of dark colors and light colors to bring dynamism and there's a dramatic sense to the scene. And now let's dive into Artemisia's life. So Artemisia was born in Rome on July 8th of 1593. Her father Orazio was a painter from Pisa who had moved to the capital to pursue his dream of becoming a great artist. And he was a huge admirer of Caravaggio. And he was actually one of his followers in his style and the way that he arranged paintings and the way in which he used the light in the paintings. Artemisia's mom died when she was 12 years old. This is a very important time in her life because Artemisia was the oldest of all of her siblings. So she basically took over the role of her mother, and she started taking care of the household and her siblings. But also, after her mother died, she started spending a lot of time in her father's studio. She lived a very secluded life, though, and she was allowed to leave the house on very, very few occasions. Orazio was very obsessed with preserving Artemisia and not letting her taint her honor. So he didn't want her to mingle into the Roman life scene because he was afraid that she could, get in trouble, basically. So, as I said, she spent a lot of time assisting her father in the studio. And that's when she started developing her passion for painting. Although she was basically illiterate until her 20s, Orazio did not allow her to have any type of formal education, and she did not learn how to read or write up until she was in her 20s. Women at the time were honestly precluded from any type of access to mainstream cultural and artistic scene. And although there were women that painted, none of them had access to the mainstream artistic avenues. Artemisia started helping her father in the studio, and there she learned how to mix colors, how to select canvases, how to arrange characters in the compositions and the characters inside the canvases. And also she observed her father using real life models. And actually her father used Artemisia a lot as one of his models for his paintings. But women at the time, as I said, they were not precluded from learning how to draw and how to paint, but they could not make a living out of painting like male artists could. And for this reason, there's so few women in art history that are remembered. However, it got to a point in which Orazio could not deny anymore his daughter's talent, because she started drawing and painting, and he could see that she was extremely talented. And also, interestingly, he tried to teach his sons how to paint, and he tried to make his legacy live on through his sons, but they were not talented at all. Artemisia was the true artist of the family. As a matter of fact, it got to a point in which Orazio, as I said, could not deny this anymore. And in a letter to the Medici family, he wrote, "In 3 anni è diventata tanto abile che posso osare dire che non ha pari." So he says, in 3 years, she has become so skilled that I can dare say she has no equals. But regardless of his recognition of Artemisia's talent, Orazio did not allow her to visit Rome and to formally study painting and drawing and to admire all the churches and all the examples that Rome had to offer at the time. Okay, sorry. So let's dive into Artemisia's first steps into the artistic scene. So this is a painting from 1610. Artemisia was 17 when she painted this subject. So the subject is called Susanna and the Elders. It's an episode from the book of Daniel, in which we have Susanna, who's this woman who is actually taking a bath in her private yard outside, and she's spied on by 2 older men who are trying to blackmail her in having her perform sexual favors for them. Otherwise, they're going to expose her and tell her husband that she committed adultery. So here's the thing that set Artemisia apart from all of the other women that had painted throughout history up until that time. Women were thought as these very feeble-minded creatures that could only achieve so much. And as I said, although they were allowed to paint, it was thought that they could only paint very cute and very easy topics to represent. For example, still lifes or flowers, very dainty things. Artemisia instead took over very complicated subjects, which in this case were religious and mythological subjects. In this case, we have a topic that is taken directly from the Bible. And what makes Artemisia's paintings so powerful usually is the female perspective that is reflected in the paintings. So in this painting, you can tell from the way that the painting is arranged, the discomfort that Susanna is feeling in being observed and spying and blackmailed. Also, as Artemisia did not have access to the mainstream channels to study art, she used herself as a model for a lot of her paintings. And it is said that this, for example, is one of the most realistic breasts in art history, because Artemisia knew the female body not only from the outside, but from the inside as well. And in the way that Susanna is sitting, the body is extremely realistic. The position is extremely realistic. The way that the hair folds, and the rest of her body folds is extremely realistic. So as I said, she painted this when she was 17. And after this, so this is here a little bit of a detail of Susanna's face. And as I said, you can really see the discomfort and uneasiness in her face. This topic had become very, very popular in the 15 and 1600s. Here's an example from Tintoretto. So in this example, yes, the eldermen are here in the background, but although this is beautiful, the topic is treated in a much different way. It's portrayed in this idealized way. Susanna is almost unaware of what is about to happen, and she's, placidly taking her bath and looking at herself in the mirror. Another example, this one is a little bit different. So Annibale Carracci was actually a contemporary of Orazio Gentileschi. In this one, you can tell more of the discomfort on Susanna's face, but the scene is much more idealized, and even the setting. And lastly, we have Guercino. So Guercino Susanna is, yes, uncomfortable, but she's looking up. She's almost disengaged from what is actually happening. And once again, the female figure is more idealized than the one that Artemisia represented. Here's another early example of her painting. This is a Madonna with child. And here's a little bit of Orazio's influence. These are not in chronological order, but just to show you how, since she moved her first steps in Orazio's studio, she really took on a lot of the topics and paintings and themes that her father was himself painting. This is Dane. Here on the left, we have Orazio's version, and here on the right, we have Artemisia's version. And this is the Annunciation. So Orazio's style compared to Artemisia is still, to me, resembling more of the Renaissance traits in the way that the lights and the darkness, the light and the darkness are used, and also in the way that the characters are idealized. Okay, so something extremely important happened in Artemisia's life that changed the rest of the course of her life. So Orazio, as I said, was unable to ignore Artemisia's talent, but he was reluctant to allow her to have a more formal education. However, he wanted for her to receive more instructions, especially when it came to perspective and drawing. So he hired, if you wish, a fellow artist of his, Agostino Tassi, to instruct Artemisia. Agostino Tassi was quite a famous painting at the time. He was a friend and very well known at the papal court of Scipione Borghese, who's Paul V. And he was actually also well known in Rome because of his bad reputation. He had a bad reputation of being a womanizer, a gambler, someone who constantly got in trouble. And more than likely, Orazio Gentileschi knew about this, because Rome at the time, was, especially in this type of environment, everybody knew everybody. And so Orazio knew about Tassi's bad reputation. But nonetheless, he invited him to his home and wanted for him to educate Artemisia. Now, there's speculation that probably Orazio wanted for Artemisia and Agostino Tassi to get married. The other reason why probably Orazio invited Agostino Tassi into his house was because before he had met Tassi, Orazio was not well liked in Rome and could not get commissions. But after Agostino Tassi introduced him to Pope Paul V, Orazio started getting more commissions and also public commissions. So Agostino Tassi was 15 years older than Artemisia, and he quickly became infatuated by her. Artemisia was a very lovely and beautiful young woman. And in July of 1611, with the complicity of the handmaid that lived at the Gentileschi's residence, Tuzia, Agostino raped Artemisia. Artemisia was 18 at the time. And what happened next was that she first of all, she tried to fight off Agostino Tassi. There are recounts told from Artemisia's perspective, in which she tells how she tried to fend him off and stop him, but she couldn't. But what happened next was that Agostino convinced Artemisia that if they started a relationship and she submitted to him, he would marry her. So at the time, there was a thing called the matrimonio riparatore, which basically allowed for a rapist to marry their victims, and this would make everything well in the eye of the law. So they would not be responsible anymore. So Agostino Tassi convinced Artemisia that he was going to marry her. And their relationship continued for about 1 year. In this 1 year, he kept on breaking this promise over and over again, to the point that Orazio Gentileschi found out about the relationship and tried to force Agostino to marry Artemisia. And when Agostino Tassi refused, Orazio Gentileschi, in a very surprising turn of events, pressed charges against Agostino Tassi. He pressed charges because Artemisia at the time was a virgin, and so her worth was still intact. So women, unfortunately, were considered as basically an exchange good between fathers and husbands. And the fact that Agostino Tassi had raped a virgin constituted something for which Orazio could press his charges for. From then, a 7-month-long trial started. And as part of the court proceedings, Artemisia had to undergo a lengthy gynecological examination to prove that, in fact, she was a virgin at the time of the rape. And also, they made her confess a first time, and she told everything that had happened. She told the jury and the judges how Agostino had tried to convince her that he would marry her. And then they made her confess a second time under torture. And they used thumb screws, which were basically these torture devices that could permanently damage the use of her hands. And for the judges at the time, the fact that she told the exact same version of her testimony under torture, and the fact that she was willing to lose the main tool of her career, since she was trying to become an artist and a painter, so she almost risked losing her hands. For them, this made the testimony valid, and it made it so that she was telling the truth. So Agostino Tassi After the trial, was actually charged with exile. He was banned from Rome, but thanks to his connection to Pope Paul V, he never carried out the sentence. He never left Rome. And actually, who had to leave Rome was Artemisia, because although in our eyes, she was the victim of this horrible event at the time, she was the one who had provoked him, the one who had fallen for him, and she was the one who ended up having to leave Rome. Also, during the trial, it turned out that the reason why Agostino Tassi could not marry Artemisia was because he was already married, and it also turned out that he had committed, he was at the center of an incestuous relationship with his sister-in-law. So once again, he was a very bad character. Right after the trial, Artemisia was quickly married off to Pier Antonio Siattesi. He was a very minor, less talented artist from Florence, and the couple left from Florence. The good thing that Orazio did for her was to introduce her to the Medici family in Florence. And it is in Florence that Artemisia started moving her first steps as an independent artist, as we will see. Once she arrived in Florence, Artemisia taught herself how to read and write. But not only, she became eager to learn and immerse herself in anything that was related to the performing art. She learned how to play musical instruments, to read, and she became very interested in science. Excuse me. This is an example of her Florentine paintings. This is Judith with her maidservant, and we'll talk about Judith and Holofernes in a second. And in Florence, Artemisia started receiving a lot of private commissions, for example, from Cosimo de' Medici, who was an admirer of Caravaggio, and Artemisia is considered one of the finest followers of Caravaggio's style. So here we have Judith slaying Holofernes. This topic, it's a topic that is once again taken from the Bible. It's from the book of Judith. And we have Judith, who's this Israelite heroine who ends up killing Holofernes, who was an Assyrian general. So in the book of Judith, Holofernes was marching onto Jerusalem with his army, and Judith basically seduces him and then convinces him that she will sleep with him. But then that night, she makes Holofernes drinks an exorbitant amount of wine. And while the man is asleep in this wine-induced stupor, she kills him. This is a subject that Artemisia will revisit many times in her career. But the version from the time in which she lived in Florence is probably one of the best examples of her art. So in this painting is a true example of Baroque art. So we talked about tenebrism. So the painting is basically emerged in this darkness on the background. And the way in which the scene is depicted is very theatrical. What makes this painting extremely relevant is the fact that the Artemisia poured her whole art and probably her anger because she represented Judith as herself and Agostino Tassi as Holofernes as being decapitated. What is interesting here is that the way in which the subject had been portrayed before was in a less involved way. So this is the example by Caravaggio. In Caravaggio's example, or in Caravaggio's painting, yes, the scene is still extremely violent, but is not as realistic as the one portrayed by Artemisia. Caravaggio's Judith is almost detached from what she's doing, and she seems disgusted by the action. And the maidservant is also this elderly woman who's not involved at all in the scene. Whether in Artemisia's version, Artemisia is really trying to carry out this deed, and we can see the maidservant being a young woman, probably Judith's age, who's helping Artemisia. It is sad that this was something that she did probably because she was betrayed by her friend Tuzia, the maidservant at the Gentileschi's house, who had not helped her while she was screaming for help while Agostino was raping her. So she, in her mind, in her ideal, she would have wanted for that female solidarity and that female help. I'll show you the previous version that she did of the same subject. This was done right after, or probably around the same time of the trial. The colors are different here. And I think that this is a less mature version compared to the one that she portrayed in Florence. And I would like to show you one last detail that to me, it's incredible. So while she was in Florence, Artemisia became friend with Galileo Galilei. So Galileo Galilei at the time was writing his papers on parabolic movements. So here, she accurately depicted the blood coming out of Holofernes' throat in a parable. The other incredible thing, and that shows Artemisia's courage and her willingness to defy the system, is the fact that if someone didn't know that she was basically portraying herself as Judith and Tassi as Holofernes, she put her namesake Artemis, the goddess Artemis, on the bracelet right here. It's hard to see, but it's here. Okay, while she was in Florence, as I said, she received a lot of private commissions. An important one was the one from Michelangelo Buonarroti the Younger, who was the great nephew of the great painter Michelangelo. She was asked, among other painters, to paint this allegory of inclination. So this is inside Casa Buonarroti, which is this residence that Buonarroti's great nephew wanted to build in honor of his great uncle. And this is actually at the center of the ceiling, and it was painted by Artemisia. This is another example of religious themes. This is Mary Magdalene. An interesting thing of the Baroque time, so the reason why there's such a huge contrast between light and darkness is the idea of the memento mori. So memento mori in Latin means remember that you will die. And a lot of Baroque paintings and art, since they were focused on religious themes, they had as their topic the idea that everything that is mundane, everything that is of this earth will eventually pass. And I know it's hard to tell, but actually in this painting, Mary Magdalene is pushing away a jewelry box, to show that she's repenting and leaving behind everything that is of this world, and she's getting ready for what's next. Here's another painting, which is, this is a self-portrait as St. Catherine of Alexandria. As I said, Artemisia used herself as her model for many, many of her paintings. Well, first of all, because it was cheaper, and secondly, because up until a certain point in her life, she did not have access to real life models because she was a woman. Here's an example instead of an historic theme, which once again, historic and religious themes were considered something that only men artists could portray and tackle. And this is Mary Magdalene in ecstasy. Something incredible that happened in Florence was the fact that Artemisia was given the honor of being admitted to the Accademia delle Arti e del Disegno. She was the first woman in history to ever receive this honor. And besides this being an incredible honor, what this meant was the fact that now she was able to sign her own contracts and buy her own art supplies. Up until that point, she had to depend on her husband, Pier Antonio, who basically became her manager. So Pier Antonio, once when they first moved to Florence, would sign contract for her, would find commissioners for her, and would buy her art supplies. Although Artemisia was the one who supported the family financially. But after she was given the honor of being admitted to the Accademia delle Arti del Disegno, she became independent. And this was a huge step in her career, both professionally and personally, because Artemisia, due to her character, was someone who longed for that independence. In Florence also became a mother. Artemisia became a mother. She had a total of 5 children. Unfortunately, 4 of them died in infancy, which was extremely common for the time, and only 1 of her daughters survived into adulthood. And another incredible thing about Artemisia is the fact that throughout her life, she was never shy, and she never tried to hide her true self and her true personality. So in 1618, while she was still living in Florence, she became an affair that was not very secret with this nobleman called Francesco Maria Meringhi. Actually, it is said, and there's proof, that Artemisia's husband knew about the affair, and in some ways he supported it because the family needed money. The family in order for them to live in Florence, they needed money, and Artemisia was trying to live quite a luxurious life because she didn't want to look like she could not make it as an artist, and she wanted to be treated and she wanted to be considered equal as a male artist. So Francesco Meringhi actually ended up financially supporting the family for a period of time. And Artemisia's husband was basically okay with the situation because he needed the money as well. Here's a quick example of one of Artemisia's letters. This is Artemisia's own handwriting. This is a letter that she sent to Francesco Maria Meringhi. And I don't know if you can tell, but she calls him mio carissimo core, so my beloved heart. And in this letter is quite sad. She's telling him about the departure of her son. And she's talking about how she misses him and she hopes to see him again. But unfortunately, by the end of 1619 and 1620, Francesco Maria Meringhi had moved on from Artemisia, and he started not supporting the family financially anymore. And this led to the next step and the next time in Artemisia's life. So between 1620 and 1621, Artemisia decided to return to Rome. So about 8 years had gone by since the trial. And due to financial struggles, as I said, she decided to return to Rome uninvited. This made Orazio, her father, furious. He did not want her back. She did not ask for permission to come back and to come back to Orazio's house with her family. And also, she had left a lot of her inventory back in Florence, which made Orazio extremely, extremely angry. And furthermore, Stiattesi and Artemisia started separating. Their marriage started deteriorating. Also, really quick, this is a painting that is called Allegory of Painting, and I think it's so beautiful. So this is a self-portrait of Artemisia sleeping with her paintbrushes, and I just think it's so gorgeous. So basically what happened in Artemisia's private life was that Pier Antonio Stiattesi was merely a background player in her life. She was the one who was supporting the family economically for the longest time, and she had a very strong character, and the two ended up divorcing, basically, although not formally, and Artemisia never remarried. So this is another incredible thing about her. Artemisia lived her life so boldly because back in the days and up until 60, 70 years ago, women had to be married in order for them to survive. But Artemisia, after Stiattesi left, never remarried and basically lived her life as a single mother, which is absolutely incredible. While she was in Rome, she started receiving more private commissions, not because she was considered this great female artist, which she was, but because due to the scandal that derived from the trial, it was almost, it was very controversial to have a painting made by Artemisia. So this is a great topic that Artemisia revisited again. So this is Lucretia. Lucretia was a Roman woman that killed herself after she was raped. So the story goes that Lucretia, in order not to face the shame derived from her rape, ended up committing suicide. So instead of having to endure a life of shame, because once again, women were not the victims, they were responsible for rape. Lucretia ended up committing herself. I think it's very interesting, the fact that once Artemisia came back to Rome and moved back to Rome, she decided to portray such a topic that was the exact opposite of what she decided to do with her own life after her rape. And here we go back to the Judith and Holofernes theme. This is the aftermath of the decapitation. This painting is absolutely beautiful. The way that the light is used and the way that the candle shines light on Judith's face and her maidservant is incredible. And then everything else gets lost in the darkness, except for the crimson curtain that it's possible to see in the back. Here's Venus and Cupid. These are just examples, as I said, of those religious and mythological themes that Artemisia visited in her life and her work. So after about 9 years in Rome, she decided to move to Naples. Naples at the time was an extremely lively and vivacious city. And most of all, it was a city in which artists could really find their fortune. This is because Naples was under Spanish domination at the time. And there were a lot of viceroys, so appointed from the Spanish court that governed the city. And a lot of them were huge art collectors. So even Caravaggio, for example, spent quite some time in Naples carrying out private commissions. And for example, one of the art buyers that commissioned a lot of work for Artemisia was the Duke of Alcalá, Fernando de Ribeira. When Artemisia moved to Naples, it is very likely that she was already known in that artistic scene, mostly because she was a follower of Caravaggio, but especially because she had already carried out commissions for the Duke of Alcalá. This is the Penitent Magdalene, which was commissioned by the Duke of Alcalá and is now in a private collection in Spain. What happened, though, of extreme significance in Naples is that Artemisia finally got what she had been wanting, which were public commissions. So as I said, at the time, no one would give women recognition for their artistic endeavors, and all of the things that Artemisia had made up until the point were private commissions. In Naples, she was given the opportunity to carry out public commissions, which for her meant that her status as an artist had been elevated and compared to the one of a male artist. So in Naples, she carried out a couple of public commissions, as I said, for the Cathedral of Pozzuoli. So she produced 3 paintings that ended up going inside the choir of the Cathedral of Pozzuoli, and and she was heavily wanted as an artist for this project by the Viceroy Manuel de Acevedo y Zuniga. So the 3 commissions that she got were the Annunciation of so this is the Archangel Gabriel that announces to the Holy Virgin that she's carrying Jesus. This painting right here, which is the martyrdom of Saint Januarius, so San Gennaro, in the amphitheater, and the Adoration of the Magi, and Saint Proclus and his mother Nicaea. So Saint Proclus was actually a follower of Saint Januarius. So Artemisia carried out this cycle of paintings that were all connected together. I think that in these paintings, you probably can tell that the style changed from what she had been previously been painting. Also, 2 of these paintings you can probably tell are damaged because there was a fire in the Cathedral of Pozzuoli that partially damaged the painting. The style changed because once there, she tried to adapt her style to what was considered fashionable in Naples at the time, because, as I said, she was extremely eager to carry out these public commissions that would give her the visibility that she thought she deserved, and she did. Here's another painting that she did. This is a private commission, though, in Naples, which is a representation of Cleopatra's death. And this is another private commission, and it's the birth of St. John. And once again, really quick, I would like to point out how the focus in almost all of Artemisia's paintings is on the female figures. So this is the birth of St. John the Baptist, but the focus it's on the women that are inside the scene. So the women that are washing him and attending to the baby. And this is David and Betsabea. Once again, those religious themes that we talked about. And Samson and Delilah. I really like this painting. Okay, so between 1638 and 1641, Artemisia decided to accept the invitation of King James I and moved to London. In London, she actually found her father. Her father had been residing in London, and I apologize, I said James I, I meant Charles I of England. So Orazio had moved to London in 1626, and he had been the court painter for Charles I of England and his art advisor. So he became the man who would suggest to Charles I what paintings to buy and what paintings to put in his private collection. So after 17 years that Artemisia and Orazio had not seen each other, the two met again. And Orazio at the time was working on an allegorical fresco for the whole of Greenwich Palace for Queen Henrietta Maria, who was the wife of Charles I. Most likely what happened is that Artemisia actually ended up joining Orazio and helping him with this fresco. And Orazio died suddenly at the age of 75 in 1636. And it is believed that Artemisia carried out what Orazio had started. But once again, because women were not considered as important as men, there's no trace, and there's no testimony of her actually helping out Orazio with this fresco. However, recent studies think that she actually painted 6 out of the 9 panels that compose this fresco. So basically, she did most of the work. By 1642, so by the time that the Civil War broke out in England and Charles I was killed, Artemisia decided to return back to Naples. In London, though, she made this painting, which is probably one of her most famous ones, and it's self-portrait as the Allegro painting. What is incredible about this painting is the realism in it. So Artemisia was a woman, for example, who had given birth 5 times. And there's a letter that she sent to Francesca Maria Meringhi in which she, for example, talks about the weight that she put on as a consequence of her pregnancies. And in this painting, you can see her beauty in the most raw and realistic way. So this is herself. She's a little bit flushed. Almost, it looks like she's sweating a little bit. But that's her, and that's her doing what she loves the most, which is painting. And I think this self-portrait is absolutely gorgeous. So in her last years, she returned to Naples. She was now in her 50s, but she kept on carrying out private commissions. And unfortunately, the thing that characterized Artemisia's life and it's the personal struggles that she had. She had constant financial issues that characterized her entire life. And once she came back from London, these financial issues became more and more significant and heavier. So in her fit now, as I said, she was not young anymore. She was trying to maybe recapture that early fame that she had once, and she was trying to desperately find new art buyers. And her desire of not being forgotten is it's seen in the letters that she writes to Don Antonio Ruffo, who was an important Sicilian politician, nobleman, patron, and art collector. So in her letters, Artemisia's strength and her fiery character really comes through. And she, in these later letters, she's basically trying to convince Don Ruffo not only to help her find new art buyers that would help her, with her financial situation, but also she truly wants to make him understand that she's not washed up, that she's as good as any other man, and she wants to keep on doing what she loves doing. These are a couple of quotes from this letter that she sent to Don Antonio Ruffo on November 13th, 1649. And she says, "I have made a solemn vow never to send my drawings because people have cheated me. In particular, just today I found that having done a drawing of souls in purgatory for the Bishop of St. Gata, he, in order to spend less, commissioned another painter to do the painting using my work. If I were a man, I can't imagine it would have turned out this way. They, the clients, come to a woman with this kind of talent, that is, to vary the subjects in my paintings. Never has anyone found in my pictures any repetition of invention, not even of one hand." This letter is quite incredible. Let's not forget this is someone who at the time was living as a single mother because she had her daughter Prudencia with her, and is basically maintaining and supporting herself. So in this letter, you can see how Artemisia is telling Don Ruffo, please do not cheat me of what I deserve, because if I were a man, you would not treat a man the same way I am being treated. Here are a few examples of her later paintings. This is Saint Apollonia. And while in her later years in Naples, Artemisia started going back to a lot of subjects that she had previously painted. Here we go again with the topic of Susanna and the Elders. I think that although Artemisia was unbelievably talented, towards the end of her life, and after everything that had happened to her as a woman, she started being tired. And I think that it's reflected in her paintings. They don't have that that impact to me that her earlier paintings had. And possibly this is because, once again, of her financial struggles as well. But this Susanna and the Elders is so beautiful, but I don't think it has the same impact of that first one that she depicted while she was 17. Here's Lucretia again, the rape of Lucretia. This is a different time of the story. The one that she had painted while she was in Rome was the moment in which Lucretia decided to commit suicide. This is the actual rape happening. And here's a beautiful Madonna and Child, though. I love this one with the rosary. What happened, though, is that towards the last years of her life, Artemisia started relying more and more on help. She had a student of hers who was Onofre Palumbo, and it's believed that in her later paintings and later commissions, a lot of the work was done by Palumbo. What happened to Artemisia at the end of her life is quite uncertain, because this painting dates back to 1651. There is a couple paintings that date back to 1652, so she was still painting around that time. But most likely what happened is that she died in the plague that devastated Naples in 1656. There's no trace of her death, and what happened is that probably she was thrown into a communal burial site, and that's why nobody actually knows what happened to her. The disappearance of Artemisia into oblivion started right there and then with her death, because she didn't have any of her family members' clothes and no actual tomb that anybody could visit. She became forgotten. But besides her physical death, what happened was a sort of death of her memory, because it was so unusual for women to be so accomplished at the time. After her death, it was believed that everything that she had produced was actually made by Orazio. And Artemisia was forgotten for about 3 centuries. She was only rediscovered in the second half of the 19th century. And the more scholars started looking into her artwork, the more information came to light. For example, in 2011, all those letters that I was mentioning to you, her correspondence between Don Antonio Ruffo and Francesca Maria Meringhi emerged. And this incredible picture of Artemisia as a woman came to light. I wanted to end this presentation with this other self-portrait of herself, and this quote, which was retrieved in one of her letters that says, "As long as I live, I will have control over my being." And I think this is such a great way to remember Artemisia. Artemisia was a full woman, not just someone, who should be remembered because of what happened to her and her rape with Agostino Tassi. So she was this artist, and she fought all her life to be considered as an artist first and as a woman second. This doesn't mean, though, that she was not an incredible, bold, courageous, and strong woman. So thank you so much. Lia?
Eccomi, ciao Erika.
Ciao.
This is a superb presentation. Thank you very much. I think everybody agrees. You did a very, very, very nice presentation, and I had no doubt on that. Okay, Erika?
Grazie, Lia.
Bravissima, Erika.
So we have one question already from Miro. If you can see that, Erika, in the yes, there's a question from Miro, which is very interesting.
Yes. So, Miro, facciamo in inglese, Lia.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, Miro, honestly, the way that she challenged the time was the fact that she decided to portray and paint topics that were considered only a male exclusive. So depicting topics of, you know, religious themes, mythological themes, historical themes was something that women had no access to. So this is the way in which she challenged the patriarchy, right? So the idea at the time that women were not able to take on such topics. So women were not considered like mentally and physically able to portray such important topics. So I think that's the way in which she challenged the artistic scene the most. And also, I think that in her personal life, she challenged everything because she was a woman who supported herself, who made a living out of, you know, with her paintings, and decided to remain unmarried. So, I mean, that's quite incredible. Non so se ci sono, I don't know if
yes, now there is a question about someone. I'm trying to read because my glasses, they are not for a computer, but they want to know where are the painting. Well, we have one here in Detroit, of course. I sent a link.
Yes.
And yes, the question is, where are Artemisia painting at this moment?
So they're actually spread out throughout the world, to be honest, because like Leah said, I want to share really quick, if I can go back. This is the painting that is at the DIA, which is the Detroit Museum of Art. 1 second. This is the painting.
Yes.
But Artemisia's paintings are at the Museo di Capodimonte. The ones that she did for the Cathedral of Pozzuoli are still in the area. Some were brought to the Museo di Capodimonte and
Capodimonte in Naples, Italy, of course.
Yes, sorry. Some of her paintings, for example, the Judith that slaying Holofernes, the one with the yellow dress, that's at the Uffizi Museum in Florence. But a lot of her paintings are actually in private collections, so not at museums around the world. United Kingdom, Spain, and Germany. She has a lot of paintings that are in private collections in Germany. And this is because what happened, like I said, her memory got lost during the years, right? So her paintings were maybe passed around during the years and they remained inside private collections rather than being bought or being sold to museums.
So Erminia Scarcella is asking a question on the painting of Virgin and Child.
Which one? The last one?
The Virgin and Child.
This one?
Yes, there is no question from Erminia. Did she have students? I think mentioned. Onofri Palumbo.
Yes, I actually forgot to mention this. Sorry, guys. This slipped my mind.
Erminia wants to ask you the question. Okay, let me just see if I can put her. Just go ahead, Erika. I'll take care of it.
I will respond to Alexandra really quick. So Alexandra, yes, she did have help. She did have students because once she moved to Naples, she actually opened a sort of private academy, if you wish. So she became not only a painter and someone who would, carry out commissions, but a teacher. So she surrounded herself of students who went to her to learn from her. Of course, because of the time, she could not open a formal or official academy, but she initiated the sort of personal academy, if you wish. And it says that you have to unmute her.
Yes, I'm trying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prego, Alexandra. Oh, secret buyer. Oh, see, I didn't know that. Grazie, Sandra. Yeah.
Just to give you an idea, I mean, the level she reached, you know?
Oh, and it's crazy, right? Because nobody knew about her for basically 300 years. And then after she became rediscovered, a lot of her paintings now are considered, and you said that, you know, the price, it's unbelievable, right? 5.2 millions. So
finally I can talk.
Erminia, adesso puoi parlare.
Finally I can talk. I cannot take it my, I don't know why, but also the video is blocked.
Do you want to come on with the video? Okay, I'll take care of that. Okay, go ahead with your question.
Really enjoyed your presentation because Artemisia Gentileschi has been my favorite painting. But I wanted to tell you, notice something about her, which struck me a lot, because if you notice the Madonna, the Virgin with the Child has been painted in many places, clearly in
right.
churches. But the way they communicate is very unusual here. Because
Yes.
finally, I see the mother looking at the face of the child and playing with. Normally, in any other presentation of this topic, the mother doesn't look at the child looks outside, look at the one who maybe look at him. But the mother is always sad, it doesn't relate with the child. This is a fantastic.
Yes, and yes, thank you so much, Armenia. Absolutely. This is so true. I guess I didn't mention it, but yes, and I think what Artemisia brought to her painting was her own experience, right? And I think this is an actual painting of a mother who's looking at her own child.
Exactly. Not only, but her dress is red. It's the first time that I see the vivid color in her painting. The
yes.
joy is out.
Yes, thank you so much.
Joy. You're welcome.
Erika, another question. Chi l'ha riscoperta?
So one of the main scholars was Longhi in the 1940s, and his wife actually came up with a book. I need to find the title. I didn't put it in here. But I can give information if we want, Leah, later. And
yes, I will.
They're the ones who truly started talking about Artemisia, not only her art, but also her personal life. I know that someone also asked an interesting question about Flavia. Saluti da Buenos Aires. Vorrei sapere in base agli archivi c'è una conclusione affidata.
Violazione da parte di Tassi, oppure se vista la promessa di matrimonio lei è stata consenziente.
Yes. Okay. So Flavia, what happened is that, so there's actually, the trial was recorded in details. There's, if you go, you can look up, and there's all the recordings of the flyers. You bring, of the trial. You bring up a very interesting question, because Agostino Tassi tried to discredit Artemisia on this basis. So he basically said that, well, I'm not responsible because she agreed to start this relationship with me. However, what ended up saving Artemisia in a way, although she was not really saved, was the fact that she was indeed a virgin at the time when Tassi raped her. And the other sad part is the fact that she got raped. She did not receive the help from the maidservant Tuzia, and she was terrified to tell her father, right? So she didn't tell her father right away, because she truly believed that Tassi would marry her. Also, we should probably remember that she was 18 at the time, and Tassi was 35, 36. So I mean, this is a full-grown man who's, you know, threatening a young woman, right? So that's what happened. Yes, yes, she was extremely brave. She was extremely brave too to go through the trial twice and the second time under torture. I mean, you know, take some guts.
Right. There's a question from Mary. Who was the next Italian female painter to gain a following?
I think that it was probably Sofonisba, but yes, exactly. Zaba Carriera? I'm not sure.
Yeah, Sofonisba.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sofonisba Anguissola, and then
sì.
her sister, Lucia Anguissola.
Alessandra Cervantes ci scrive Rosalba Carriera.
I'm verifying. I didn't check this, but I know for sure, like Sandra said about Sofonisba and Lucia Anguissola, because they and I'm not sure. Oh, Fabio, yes. So Fabio is right. They're currently having this putting together this exhibition of all the female artists that were significant for the Italian art scene.
Bene, penso che possiamo chiudere con le domande. I think we
yes,
can stop the questions. Erika, fantastico. I also have Daniela that she was not able to attend, as Sandra mentioned it, that she is very pleased with your presentation. And of course, we are going to thank you in person soon. And thank you the members of the Dante Alighieri Society of Michigan and our friends from everywhere, Argentina, Ottawa, and Australia. I know that we have a great networking, and we would like to continue that if we can. We want to conclude to invite you for our next event will be on March 21st, and is the second event of the series Momenti Musicali. And we have a protagonist, the composer Claude Debussy, and the poet Eugenio Montale.
beautiful.
We have the pianist Maria Luigia Tutalo and Manabu Tasakawa, con gli actors Emanuele Capuano and Steve Donner. Please join us, sign up. If you go to our website, dantemichigan.org, you can follow the signing process. Sandra?
Thank you very much to everybody, and we hope to see you soon in person or on the web.
Speriamo di persona.
Speriamo di persona.
Grazie tantissimo.
Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, that's my Siri.
Bye.
Arrivederci.